and in New Brunswick, we've added another 130 to our
Wow.
portfolio. So we just really allowed us to scale and I can see just the similarities and the patterns from what I was doing before. It was similar here. We did it once and then it's a rinse and repeat model after that. Areas, tenants, price per unit, construction is just becomes, we just continue to work at systemizing it so it allows us to scale.
Well, look, I'm very excited to get into this conversation. I look forward to hearing more about your story. But before we do, I just want to remind everyone who's been listening and following us for a long time, thank you for your continued support. I really appreciate. Please share this episode with a friend who you feel could benefit from this conversation. Give us a like, a follow. And for all those who are interested, you can also join our Patreon community, to which you get many advantages. And I'll get back to talking a little bit about that at the end. So, Adriana, you're based outside of Toronto. You are in Georgetown, I believe. You're the founder of Ace Properties, and you've been killing it recently. So, first of all, how in the world did you get started in real estate investing?
Yeah, crazy. Not from a real estate or investing background at all. What we did have that went on in our favor was a construction background. So my husband has been in construction for about 15 years now. So we had that background, which led us to working with some real estate investors that were doing high-end flips here in Ontario. And that was really my first light bulb moment of, we were hired to do all the work. I'm like, okay, how do we also own the house and live here and get access to that kind of profit as well? So that's really was my first light bulb moment that there was something else that we could do, but there was a why behind it. Obviously, I feel like anything that we do that's significant in life, it's got to be either from motivation or inspiration. And I was motivated into real estate because my mom had went through a mental health situation and had moved in with us. And I had two little kids at home, one year old, 1.5 year old. And all of a sudden I felt the weight of not only do we have to support my own family, I have to now support beyond, and wondered, how is it that you make wealth? How do you create money beyond your paycheck to paycheck? Had no idea, to be honest, but it was just started putting my intention and attention in that direction. There has to be something else that we can be doing, coincidentally, or as the universe works, started working with this couple that were real estate investors, and after that started seeking specifically the real estate world. Went and got some education right away, found a course, joined a membership to learn about real estate investing, and started our journey there.
Nice. So as you said, you really had a reason why, and you had an intention of actually seeking some expert advice and going for it. So can you kind of share what was your first deal like?
Yeah, so we did start, and there'll be a two-step answer here, because our very, very first move in real estate was to finish our basements.
Nice.
I think a lot of people do start there. We lived in a townhouse, but we had an unfinished basement, and I was determined that we were going to create a secondary unit. It was a very interesting process even to get through that. And that was my first dive into zoning and permits and applications, and this is in the city of Mississauga in Ontario. We went through that process, got our first tenant in, and legally duplexed our house. Soon after we were done, we renovated the remaining floors upstairs and sold that house. A little nuts, moved into a rental property. Our family was like, what are you doing? You just bought this house, you have two small kids, you've only owned it for a couple of years. But in my mind, I'm seeing all this equity sitting there. We couldn't really refinance. We didn't have the qualifying power to do that. We didn't have any money left over to invest in another deal. So I just wanted to free up that cash. So took that cash and bought our very first significant investment was a single family that we purchased in Hamilton, Ontario, that we converted into a legal fourplex.
Oh, wow. So a single family home that you got into a fourplex?
Yeah.
Wow. How do you do
That,
that?
that was crazy. It was crazy. So it was just a massive home, first of all. It was already, it was the homeowners that were there, but they were using it as a rooming house. There's just so many people living there. It was in really, really rough shape. We got in a really good time. Something that I learned through the education was to, and as I went through the basement, was to look at zoning. So I sort of took the map of Hamilton. I'm like, where do I have density zoning here? Sort of mapped and outlined all the areas that had high density zoning for the new LRT proposition they had put in place. I knew I could do multiple units in any of those given homes. So found a property within that zoning. It was a massive property. I didn't know we could pull off 4 units, but once we were in there, I was determined and I made sure it happened. So we had basement, main floor, second floor, and an attic space that became a studio apartment. Obviously, it was a massive uplift. We also redid the whole property, like everything. It was a full gut job. It was a massive undertaking for our first deal. Learned lots of
Yeah.
lessons, lots of mistakes, lots of, positive advancement as well. And it was really life-changing. We bought it for $340,000, put about 250,000 in, and then refinanced the 700 within 8 months. And that's actually one of the properties we sold last year for 1.4 million. So
Nice. Good deal. Good deal.
yes. Yeah.
Well, it shows the power of real estate and how much wealth you can create when you actually do it properly. Like you chose to sell it, you could have held on to it, but in any case, you walked away with a lot of value.
Yeah, it was exciting because out of that one property that we sold, our primary, and we were willing to go rent. Don't get me wrong, we moved into this beautiful rental house. We didn't, we went from owning a townhouse to living a fully 3,000 square foot detached rental property, paying less than what we paid when we were owning this townhouse, but it allowed us to do like 5 properties from that one and recycle our money 5 times. We did that first fourplex and we did that 4 more times, same model, except one of them was a triplex. But just kept going with the fourplexes. We had the area, we had the knowledge, we knew what we were doing, we knew the math. So just, rinse and repeat after that.
Yeah. And as you said, then you kind of get on that bandwagon and you developed a good model and you just want to crank it. So is there a moment where you started to realize that you wanted to do bigger properties and go into like bigger multifamily properties?
Yeah. So about, let's say 3.5 to 4 years in, we had just closed on our last 2 deals. We ended up doing 2 at a time on the very last go because again, we had such a good roll. And I started feeling like, okay, so it took us about 4 years to get to 20 units doing the fourplexes, which was exciting and life-changing for us. But I'm like, just feeling really burned out too at that point. It was a lot of work. I was involved in every single part of it. I was working on the weekends for the same education company that I went and took education from. I got hired to work for them and I was traveling with them on the weekends. Doing sales, and then the rest of my week I was not only with the kids, but I was doing the real estate the rest of the time, finding the deals, raising the capital, project managing the construction, property managing it as well, refinances, and then doing it again. I was just so hands-on with everything that I was doing that I realized I can't even think of scaling, or I kind of want to take time off now because it was just so much work. So I started to take a moment and ask myself, how do I scale but do less? And started setting my intentions in that direction and finding that answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that question. Like, how do I do more with less time required of me? And so what brilliant conclusion did you come up with?
Yeah, it was an interesting journey. So, I've noticed a pattern in my life whenever I'm like in a pattern of setting these intentions. I went through another round of seeking education. I joined a mastermind. I started getting coaching. business coaching and personal coaching, and just started again investing in myself, because of what I realized: for you to level up or change, it's about becoming somebody else. It's about the process of evolving. For me to evolve, I can't do that without changing my thoughts, my beliefs, my values, my systems. So that's really what I started to focus on. I'm like, I don't have an answer. I can't even imagine what the answer is, but I know it's out there. So I'm just going to put some time and effort and invest in myself to expose myself to what else is out there and where to find these answers. And then I'm talking to a lot of good people. By that time, I had already grown quite a nice and amazing network of people in my life. So I really reached out to people that I knew that were doing well in real estate, that were successful, that had been doing it for many years, and just started picking their brains. Like, how has it been for you? What do you do? What's your strategy? What have you liked? What haven't? What have you learned? And I really found a common theme in people that were doing for 15, 20 years, that a lot of them were in the multifamily space. I'm like, okay, tell me about multifamily. I don't know much about it. How does that work? What does it look like? How do you do that? Just went into that area of research and understanding what the multifamily space looks like. The moment I got it, it takes me like, a bit of like research and understanding and reflection. Is this the right strategy for me? Am I interested? Is it going to take me to my goals? And once it makes sense to me, now I got to put it into implementation. I don't know how else to do it. I'm just going to have to go buy one. I'm just going to go buy a multifamily and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, exactly. Like the best way to learn is to do, and that's what you did with your single family homes that you converted. So did you start with a sixplex, or what was that transition like?
Yeah, so our first multifamily was a 7 units. Same thing, like we're gonna start. The other change that I made at the time, not only in the multifamily, I also changed locations where I was investing. I went out of province to look for multifamily properties. That was also intentional on my end. It was also based on a light bulb moment that I had in talking to somebody who's also a veteran real estate investor. And ultimately, with our properties here, I was very involved. I would drive there every day, a 45-minute drive each way, to be on site, to be at the properties. And I had asked her, I'm like, how do you not do that? How do you not take so much of your time and physically be so involved? And she said, I was only able to do that myself when I started investing out of province, because I had no choice. Yeah. I'm like, okay, that makes sense to me. I can consider that,
Yeah. By so far that you can't go anyways.
You're going to have to figure out, you don't have an option. So, and that's exactly what happened. I'm so grateful. It was more than one reason. That was the very first reason when I started looking out of province, but obviously so many other reasons followed after that. We ended up zooming into the New Brunswick province, and there were so many things that have been so positive about investing there, from price point or entry point to the market, to cap rates, to the cash flow that we're able to get from our properties, to the landlord friendliness of the province, to the just like blue collar, good people culture, slow paced culture of the market as well. There's so many positive things that have really allowed us to scale there.
Nice. I like it how you actually put a physical barrier for you to not be as involved. It's like, I can't go, otherwise I have to buy a plane ticket. So that limits it. And it forces you to systematize, to build a better team, to have good communication. So there's a huge transition in starting to invest out of town, or at a distance. And to be frank, I haven't done it yet. Like all of our properties are still in Quebec, and within driving distance. And so I'd be curious to find out more and to share with the rest of the audience, like, what did that look like in terms of adaptation and ensuring the continuity?
Yeah, so I guess I'm going to start by saying it's literally one step at a time, just like with anything else that you do, right? Because we tend to get overwhelmed thinking of all the ins and outs. I'm like, don't think that far ahead in some way. So I ended up at the mastermind that I was part of, I ended up meeting a person who's now my business partner in those properties, and most of those properties out there. He was already an investor in that province. Once I zoomed into New Brunswick, I just started talking to everybody that I possibly could that owned property in that province. Like, how is it? How do you like it? Property manager, all the things, the contacts, how's the market? How's the tenants? Just asking a ton of questions. He already had a portfolio out there. So I said, hey, like, are you interested? We could look at something together. And honestly, this happened by, I'm going to call it luck. But he ended up moving from BC to New Brunswick and now lives there full time. And that was not planned or intended on our end, but I love that model now because even though I'm not there physically, I have my business partner who is, a full owner just like me of these buildings and is our boots on the ground. It's able to be on site. And then over time, we created our own in-house property management company, which has also made all the difference in the performance of our assets as well. And that was just a process of figuring out, again, one step at a time, how can I manage everything? And I'm lucky and blessed to be running, this company from home. This is my home office here. I don't have an office, and I get to pick up my kids at school every day and I get to drop them off. And I love that I've been able to build this lifestyle that kind of fits within what I wanted to be doing.
Yeah, for sure. So, and as you said, like, it's luck, and then it's also like the timing of events that your partner actually moved to the market that you're investing in. So you guys are still doing the deals together, and then like, how did that accelerate your growth? Like, where are you at now?
Yeah, so we're definitely still doing deals together. We have a property that we're closing on the end of March right now, building our newest acquisition. So we're definitely still acquiring, growing over there and scaling. It was massive. I mean, it took me about 4 years to get to 20 units. In the next 2 years, since I started investing multifamily and in New Brunswick, we've added another 130 to our portfolio. So we just really allowed us to scale. And I can see just the similarities and the patterns from what I was doing before. It was similar here. We did it once, and then it's a rinse and repeat model after that. Areas, tenants, price per unit, construction, it just becomes, we just continue to work at systemizing it so it allows us to scale.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the scaling process, and you said it beautifully, like putting in place systems and processes is so key. I was hoping we could take like maybe a few minutes so you kind of let us know, like, what does that mean? And are there examples? Are there like online platforms that you've started to use? How did your processes, like, how did you document? Where is it stored? How do you share it? Like, give us some tangible examples and how people can take your advice and actually put it in place on their properties.
Yeah, so the biggest learning that I had, it took me started 2022 with the full focus of this is the year that I'm going to systemize, automate, hire, all the things, so that I can continue to scale, because I can't scale my time anymore. So what I ended up learning throughout that process was people comes first before the system. And I hadn't quite caught on to that at first, because our first immediate thinking is, okay, let me go find out the system and build a system. I don't know how to build a system. That's the truth. I'm like, I don't know. That's not my area of expertise. It wasn't until I had the right people on my team to build a system for me and collaborate with me that I actually took off. So this is ultimately, to grow a business, you're looking at products, you're looking at people, and you're looking at systems, right? That's the three measures there. People comes first is my now 2 cents on that. People always ask those questions when you're growing a business, like, how can I afford to hire somebody? Like, how does that all work? It's a little I understand.
Yeah.
I have never regretted hiring somebody if it's the right fit. Okay, if you have hired somebody and you're regretting it and you can't afford them, there's just not the right fit for what you're needing them for or for your business. There's just the value is just not there, and that's why you feel the pinch. So that was also a learning process, because I did hire people that I'm like, it's not really moving anything along. I'm not seeing the value, and then hired somebody else. It was just a process of gaining clarity there. It wasn't until I started working, kept trying and setting the intention, that I saw they needed value. And that was also my new standard. When I start
Yeah.
working with somebody new, when I get somebody on my team, I need to feel that immediate value. And it's an exchange. They feel it too, right?
Mhm.
Like there has to be an immediate value exchange. Otherwise, it's just not the right fit, and I'm ready to move forward. But it was their skill sets in building the systems, and I already had the processes. It was just a matter of like transcribing it onto them and building the systems. In terms of software, absolutely. I'm really focused on automations, softwares, AI. I will leverage anything that I can to make, accurate and smooth systems for the company. In terms of a CRM, I build the whole backend of my company on Monday.com. Again, not me directly, but the team builds that out for me. We set a lot of automations, but everything is sort of in there. And then we build teams around. So we have a bookkeeping team or like financial overall team. They also
Yeah.
do like data reporting for us, from like cash flow analysis to payments to investors. Like I can't do that myself, but I do need to see it every month. Like, where are we at with our investment? What's the vacancy rates looking like? Repairs and maintenance budgets. Like, how do we? And
Yeah.
I had to build that out because I couldn't find a bookkeeper that had this available. I'm like, how can I find somebody that's going to be able to provide this sort of reporting to me? And they don't do financial analysis, you just literally punch numbers
Yeah.
into my, what I need to see, and then I can evaluate. And we have a meeting once a month. I'm like, okay, this is where we're at, and I can set directions and intentions to how to operate the portfolio based on that information. That also goes out on a quarterly basis to our investors in terms of like reporting for them as well. That goes to the accountant for tax filing. So that took a minute to get that organized and systemized on their ends. We have a marketing team as well. Same thing. They help me with the YouTube channel, reaching out to guests, all the podcasts, but social media, email campaigns, marketing material for our deals, like landing pages, anything that we need to create on that side. They do that for us as well. And then we have like the operation side of things. We have full-time staff that does like property operations. We have an in-house property management team too. And all of it is mostly leveraged on Monday.com. We use other apps that connect with that, from Zapier to Calendly, Zoom. And
Yeah.
then we
All those
leverage
integrations.
all the other apps that are out there. And I'm sure there's a million other ones that I can't even think about right now that the team uses on a daily basis to be able to run everything.
Yeah.
But my goal when I set the intention was, how do I own, my mind thinks, I'm like, start asking myself these questions. How do I own hundreds of units but work 2 hours a week, was the question that I came up with, that I'm like, how do I do that?
Yeah.
Had that intention in setting up the systems.
Yeah. And the thing is that you've also reached a point where the more process you put in place now and the more you're able to delegate, the more time you free and the more you can just go and find new deals, package them, talk to investors, and actually just focus on what you're good at. And I think that's something that really limits a lot of people at the beginning, is because they want to do everything themselves. And that's a trap.
It's a trap. Yes, it definitely keeps you stuck for much longer than it should if you're able to just move it forward very fast, and having the mindset of like bringing the right people into your life and into your business.
Yeah. And so in having that growth, you said it took you like, I think 4 years to go from 1 to 20 units, and now you've scaled to like 200 and something. What do you think made you so successful in the last like 2-3 years? Like, how were you able to do so much?
Yeah, so I ultimately I can see like timelines in my life where there major shifts happens. In the last 2 years, part of what I did was I started doing a lot of self-development, going back to it's more about who I am than about what I'm doing. The tasks can only take me so far if I don't have the right mindset or growth internally. So I just really shifted into self-development. This was beginning of COVID too. Obviously, there was a lot going on in the beginning of COVID. There was just a major uncertainty. Nobody knew what was going on, what was going to end up happening, where everything was going to go. So I just felt a little stuck, a little scared, a little trapped. I think like a lot of people did, and had to make a decision at a time. Like, I'm not going to let this take me down. I need to like rise above. I need to, just what do I need to do here to get myself to a new level to experience growth instead of contracting and being scared and
Yeah.
so started focusing on self-development, hired a like personal coach at the time, hired a business coach, joined the mastermind. It was all happening at the same time. It was the same mastermind where I met my business partner. Started listening to podcasts and books, morning routine, did 75 hard, just like a ton of like self-development, self-care, as much time as I could spend on myself and my mindset. Because what I realize is if I'm not inputting new information, leveraging other people's energy and knowledge, then I'm just stuck in my own same
Yeah.
pattern of thoughts. Unless I
Yeah.
introduce new thoughts and I'm open to that, unless I'm willing to reevaluate my belief systems around things. Because that was a conversation we had about money. One of the first conversations I had with my personal coach was money. He said to me, how do you see money? What's your value around money? I'm like, I don't know. Is that a thing? Like, I've never really stopped to think about it that way. So he's like, let's write it down. And he was so intentional. Like, what are your beliefs around money? And I'm like, how can I be ready to receive large sums of money into my life if my beliefs around money are scarcity, fear, whatever, like lack of security. Those are my feelings around money. I'm not being very welcoming to it. So how do I start to change those beliefs? How do I change the beliefs when I open and go pay a bill here to, and just started hiring somebody. Like I needed to change my beliefs around money, and it made a massive difference in our financial success. And again, it all started with my mindset first, and that got reflected into my actions.
Yeah. Just hearing you describe your evolution over time, I love it because it seems like every successful individual, whether right now we're obviously very focused on real estate, whether it's real estate, whether it's tech, whether it's sports and high performers, whether it's any other domain, I find like at some point, it really stops being about the technical and it's really just about the mindset. It's about the openness. And you said like also the openness and have the ability to welcome new things that might disrupt the equilibrium, but with time will create a balance that's just further up. And anyways, I find you presented it really well, where you just focused on yourself and you focused on your well-being and your state of mind. And for so many people out there and probably that you've met as well, that are like, oh, I'd love to invest in real estate, but like, and the first thing they do is like list all the limits that they have. I don't have capital. I don't know where to go. I don't know if I can trust someone else. I don't know this and that. And it's like, okay, well, look, stop and then just think for yourself. Who do you want to be? What does that look like? Then you can start to move forward.
So here's what's interesting about that, and you just spoke to it, and it will, if somebody that's listening to this is going to start noticing it too. For most people, the way our brains work and our patterns of thoughts is the moment you think of something, your first thought goes into risk mitigation or like, what's the problem? And then the next few sentences is explaining to yourself and to other people why you are where you are. Okay, so, I really wish I could do real estate and be financially free, but I have this thing with my family members. And the reason is when I first got married, this happened, and this is the conversation. Like, this is a problem. This is how I got to this where I am, just constantly explaining why you can't do the things that you want to do. And this is just such a common like way that our brains think. You go to a dinner party and you're sitting down with people and you will hear that and you will notice that type of conversation. I no longer spend time there, and I'm really intentional about my thoughts process. I'm really intentional about my feelings, because my feelings really give me a signal that my thoughts are not in the right direction. When I'm having a conversation with you, if I start feeling anxious or stressed or worried, I already know that I'm taking my thoughts in the wrong direction here. And it's then my ability and my intention to redirect them into the direction that I want them to go. If I'm hoping to be successful, this is the conversation I need to be having. It's around success, it's around victory, it's around conquering, it's around business, it's around money, it's around, mindset, and not in the other direction. So it's living intentionally that way makes a massive difference in the direction that you design your life in.
Yeah, there's so much in there. I'm so glad you shared all this. And again, like you're a beautiful example of how that intention will lead to success, and your track record speaks for it. Adriana, if anyone wants to know more about you, what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, great question. So I'm on social media quite a bit, Facebook and Instagram. They're both my name, Adriana Ostapenko. Feel free to give me a follow there. I have a YouTube channel at Ace Properties and a website at ace-properties.com. Feel free to check it out as well.
Yeah, perfect. And we'll also put it in the show notes if you have any other questions, or if you want to know how to find out more about Adriana. So thank you very much for sharing your story. It's very inspiring. And again, to everyone listening, if Adriana can do it, you can do it too. You just have to choose. You have to want it hard enough, and you have to put in the time, because it didn't just fall from the sky for Adriana. So thank you very much for your participation, Adriana. It's a pleasure to have you today.
Thanks, Axel. It was amazing. Looking forward to chatting again soon.
Oh yeah. Sorry. So to everyone listening, thank you for following. Again, share this episode with a friend who could benefit and be inspired by this story. And we'll talk to you again next week. As usual, research your market, go make some offers. Thank you very much, and I'll talk to you next week. Signing out.